Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
And hi, everyone. We hope you're having a great day. I'm Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and I am here with Shannon O'Shea, and we're from the nursing department. Say hello, Shannon.
Hi, everyone.
Here at Nassau Community College. And today our guest is Ilan Danieli, and he is a CEO of Precipio, a specialty cancer diagnostic company. He has served as the CEO since the founding of the company in 2011. Ilan holds an MBA from Darton School at the University of Virginia and a BA in economics from Barling University in Israel. So we're here talking today about liquid biopsies. Good afternoon, Ilan.
Good afternoon.
So we're talking about liquid biopsies, and for the listening audience, tell us what that is.
Sure. So typically, cancer has been diagnosed by biopsying the actual tumor wherever it is in the body. And the purpose of that is to evaluate the biology of the tumor and correctly diagnose the cancer. What we've learned is that the tumor sheds various cells into the bloodstream called circulating tumor DNA, and that today there are technologies that enable us through a simple blood draw to capture those circulating tumor cells and conduct much of the same analysis that can be done on the tumor itself. So the advantage of that is you avoid an invasive procedure, a surgery, in essence, of going in and obtaining a biopsy. It also enables more frequent testing to receive up-to-date information on the situation of the cancer.
So while a tissue biopsy is more invasive because you have to use an endoscope or a needle to aspirate the tissue or from the individual, the liquid biopsy, you can just take a sample of the saliva or blood or urine to capture some of this DNA or explore what kind of tumor may be present in the patient. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, exactly right.
And so what are the benefits in a liquid biopsy versus a tissue biopsy?
Well, so there's several things. First of all, currently the way cancer is treated, a tumor biopsy is done once at the disease onset. So it's done once at the beginning, and then the patient undergoes treatment. What we've learned is that during the treatment, the biology of the tumor changes. And so if we only have an initial data point at the beginning of the disease to rely on, and that drives the treatment path, that may no longer be relevant. We know that certain chemotherapies, for example, will alter the DNA and the biology of the tumor to make it non-responsive. And unfortunately, sometimes the way that is found out is because, in a routine CT scan, for example, the tumor is found to be growing instead of shrinking, and so we realize the treatment hasn't been working. And that's a bit of a matter of fact or after the fact discovery. What we'd like to be able to do is be able to track the response of the tumor and do that for routine ongoing testing. Obviously, it's not realistic to have the patient go under the knife and do a surgery once a month or once a quarter to obtain tissue biopsy. Liquid biopsy really opens up a window to being able to get real-time, up-to-date information.
So we can track the progress from before, during, and after the treatment of chemotherapy and or any other treatments for cancer.
That's exactly right.
So what cancers are usually misdiagnosed? Or how common is this happen?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And unfortunately, the answer is we don't know, because the only way misdiagnosis is discovered is either through a second opinion or through a realization that the treatment isn't working and a second review of the patient's situation. And that doesn't always happen. As we know, cancer is a very devastating disease, and patients can be put on a treatment, and the treatment doesn't work, and the patient dies, and that patient may have been misdiagnosed, and we don't even know it. There is, however, extensive data that shows anywhere from 3 to 5% in the more simpler cancers to up to 20 to 25% in the more complicated cancers. And so this problem is out there, and it's a major problem that we as a company have decided to battle.
So is the liquid biopsies able to detect more of diagnose earlier stage cancers or in high-risk individuals or some hereditary cancer syndromes that would not otherwise be diagnosed with a tissue biopsy?
Absolutely. So there's two applications to liquid biopsies. One is screening, and the other is monitoring. What you're talking about, what you're referring to, is screening of patients or people that are not yet patients to look for some of those markers that can indicate that the patient may have genetic mutations that down the road can trigger cancer, or they may be at higher risk.
Right.
So certainly that's going to be a big game changer in being able to evaluate through a liquid biopsy what the patient's situation is. The second application is for monitoring, as we discussed previously, being able to track the response and progress of the patient while they're undergoing treatment.
So how often is the liquid biopsy used, and are practitioners using it?
This is certainly this is gradually becoming more of a mainstream area, although I think there's a lot of progress to be made. I think it's becoming more prevalent on the screening side. And part of the reason is because there's companies that develop very large, very broad panels that are sort of a catch-all that look for everything. And as an individual who is not yet, who doesn't have cancer, you want to be screening for everything and lift up every rock to see if you can find something. And so there's companies that develop those kind of very large, broad panels, and you'd get tested once, and that's it. The problem is that those broad panels aren't really relevant for monitoring, because when you're in the situation monitoring, there's really only a few specific genes or biomarkers that we would be looking for, and those large panels don't really apply. They're an overkill. And so they're less used in that field. There are companies such as ours that are coming out with products that are more specific, more targeted and focused tests that are specifically for patients on a certain therapy. So, for example, one of the panels that we launched is for a type of treatment called TKI therapy. And data shows that approximately 30% of patients within the first year are going to become non-responsive to that therapy. And you want to know when that is, sooner rather than later. So it's a specific panel, very small, very easy to run, and also inexpensive. And that is a panel that is far more attractive for that application.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. And I'm Jeanine Cook-Garard, and I'm here with Shannon O'Shea. And today our guest is Ilan Danieli, and we're talking about liquid biopsy. So Shannon has a question for you.
Yes, so my question regarding the liquid biopsy, what is the cost difference between the liquid versus the normal tissue biopsy?
Well, there's a whole slew of costs that you have to look at. The biggest cost that's avoided by liquid biopsy is, of course, the whole cost of hospitalization. That can be, from thousands to $10,000 of dollars, depending on the patient's situation, how many nights they have to spend in the hospital, et cetera. We're talking about walking into an office, doctor's clinic, and, doing a 2-minute blood draw, and you're out of there afterwards. So that is probably the largest element to the cost. The diagnosis, it depends on who's looking at it, which pathologist is looking at it, what tests are run on the various biopsies. That can vary, probably between several $100s to up to $1,000, I would say, for a full evaluation of a biopsy. And I would say it's a similar cost for liquid biopsies as well, although there are diagnostic panels that are as expensive as $5,000 and $8,000. Those are kind of some of the more comprehensive panels that we discussed before.
So tell me, would there be indication for a patient, particularly who has the liquid biopsy and would go for, therefore, after the liquid biopsy to having a tissue biopsy? Are they used together to confirm diagnosis, or would the liquid biopsy be enough?
Typically, the liquid biopsy would be enough, and that would be done after the tissue biopsy. As of today, most physicians are most comfortable with a tissue biopsy.
Yeah.
And so unless there are situations, those situations exist where the patient cannot be biopsied. It may be a tumor may be in a place that is unreachable, or the patient may be in a physical condition that, they just can't undergo that kind of invasive surgery. At that point, the liquid biopsy will replace it. But for the most part, pathologists and physicians will prefer to do a tumor biopsy where possible. Once that's done, though, for ongoing monitoring, liquid biopsy is the predominant method to ascertain updated information on the patient's biology.
How long has this particular biopsy been used by practitioners?
This is probably less than 5 years old in terms of this advance and technology. Different tests and different technologies have come up, developed by various companies, but I would still say this is very much in its early stage and far from being a leading method of diagnosis.
So if an individual in your listening audience has, for example, suspected cancer, would you suggest or would you make a recommendation that they would suggest this to their practitioner? Even though they traditionally don't use the liquid biopsy, would you say that it would be something that the person can suggest to their practitioner to use or to recommend?
Right. So obviously this is up to the treating physician to make the decision. They're the one who's seeing the patient and see the whole picture. We always encourage patients to have a frank and open discussion with physicians and not to be afraid or cautious about making suggestions. That's a good dialogue and a healthy dialogue the patient should have with their physician. I would say that if a patient is going to be biopsied, if they're able to undergo a tissue biopsy as a primary diagnosis, that's probably the best way to go. But I would also encourage them as they're going through treatment to ask their physician, how do we know how we're doing? How do I know that I'm beating the cancer, that the tumor is shrinking, and that I'm getting better and not worse? And what are the tools that we have available to monitor that? Among them, liquid biopsies is one.
So as we are seeing a lot of cancer cases in our community, would you suggest to someone that has been diagnosed with cancer that they still, even though they have the biopsy, liquid or tissue biopsy, that they would get a second opinion? What is your view about that?
100%. When my father was diagnosed with cancer, the first thing we did is got a second opinion. Oftentimes people think that second opinion is kind of a tool to question someone else, to cast judgment, and that couldn't be further from the truth. We got a second opinion from an expert who confirmed absolutely the first diagnosis and agreed with it, and that was a great source of confidence for our family to know that, okay, we know what we're up against, and let's go beat this cancer. I think there's too many mistakes that are done. Cancer is complicated. It requires significant amount of expertise. And, at the end of the day, the pathologist who's evaluating it is human, and we all make mistakes. And there couldn't be anything more important than getting the diagnosis right so that everyone, we all work as a team and everyone knows what we're up against.
Great. This is a great time to take a break. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and I'm here with his nursing student, Shannon O'Shea, and we're talking with Ilan Danieli about liquid biopsies. And so you're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
You're not wired to have a response to this sound. You're neutral to it. You hear it every time you finish a meal and never feel anything. But if we were able to associate this sound with a new stimulus, save the food, we've achieved pulling a natural response from you. Save the food. Why are we doing this, you may ask? Save the food. Because this ad is trying to change your after-meal behavior through brainwashing. Because food waste costs the average family $1,500 a year. Save the food, cha-ching! And $1,500 extra bucks is like getting a pay raise. Save the food, cha-ching! You're promoted. Which could pay for your child's braces. Save the food, cha-ching! You're promoted.
Check out my braces.